The sound of a champagne glass shattering against the polished floor rang sharp and cold. Inside Jetstream Airline's luxurious boardroom, crimson numbers danced across the giant screen. $40 million wiped from quarterly profit forecasts. Executives sat frozen, their breath caught in their throats. Across town, in a high-rise apartment overlooking the city, a man allowed himself a faint smile, the glow of his phone screen reflecting off his face. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to slam a fist on the table. One press of a button was enough to shake an entire airline. Malik Carter, 40, 3 years old, CEO of Tech Innovate. The man no one dared to deny a seat at any table. But to understand this moment, we must rewind a few days, back to when a very public humiliation lit the spark of the storm. That morning, Atlanta's airport gleamed with steel and glass. Malik, dressed in a flawlessly tailored Italian suit, his tie as sharp as a straight line, walked with the decisive cadence of leather shoes against marble. His face carried the calm confidence of a man who had stared down 1,000 boardrooms and hundreds of negotiations. On his wrist, a Patek Philippe caught the light, a quiet marker of success. He entered the first-class lounge, bathed in soft amber light over leather seats. A glass of sparkling water bubbled beside him. An investment brief glowed on his sleek iPad, every detail promising a smooth trip. Malik was bound for San Francisco to meet the West Coast's largest funds, a deal that could add billions to his company's valuation. Flight Jetstream 1857 to San Francisco. We now invite first-class passengers to board. He rose, carrying his Mont Blanc briefcase, and walked toward the gate. He presented his diamond, tier card, and first-class ticket. The gate agent, a white woman with a polished name tag that read Brooke Jensen, offered a thin smile and eyes as cold as glass. "Sorry, economy hasn't been called yet." Her tone was flat, dismissive, her glance barely grazing the ticket. Malik froze. He extended the ticket again, voice steady. "I'm first class." Brooke raised her brows, studying the ticket as though searching for a forgery. "I'll need to see your ID." All around him, white passengers in expensive suits breezed past with nothing more than a casual glance at their tickets. No one else was asked for anything more. Malik slipped out his wallet, handing over his driver's license. "I'll need a second form of ID." Her tone sharpened, unyielding. Malik's breath slowed, his chest heavy. He had flown first class on Jetstream dozens of times each year, and had never experienced this. "You didn't ask anyone else for that." Brooke's gaze remained icy. "It's a security protocol, sir." The word "sir" fell heavy, less respect than dismissal. A cough sounded behind him, an impatient white businessman muttering, "Never been asked for extra ID." His voice dissolved into the air, ignored by all. Malik pulled out his phone. "I'll record this because I believe I'm being discriminated against." Brooke immediately pressed a button beneath the counter. "Security to gate 14. Heavy footsteps echoed. An officer appeared, hand resting lightly on his holster. Dylan Hart, face impassive, eyes fixed only on Brooke, not Malik, as if he wasn't even there. "What's the issue? This passenger isn't cooperating." Brooke pointed at Malik. Malik inhaled sharply. "I've shown my ticket, my diamond tier card, my ID. I'm being asked for more than any other passenger. This is discrimination." Dylan stepped forward, blocking his path, voice flat. "You need to comply with airline staff." "And I have," Malik shot back, eyes flashing with restrained fury. "What else is required?" Around them, passengers began raising their phones, cameras recording silently. No one spoke, but lenses captured every second. 10 minutes later, after humiliating rounds of calls and verification, Malik was finally allowed through. But as he stepped onto the plane, he froze. Seat 2A. His seat was already taken. A middle-aged white man lounged comfortably, smirking at the sight of Malik holding his ticket. "Sorry, this is my seat." Malik held out his ticket to the head flight attendant. She, Erin Cole, glanced briefly before forcing a tight smile. "This is Mr. Peter Lang, a Platinum Tier member. There was an adjustment to the seating." "No one informed me?" Malik's voice was low, clipped. "You can move to economy or wait 3 hours for the next flight." Erin's eyes flicked away. The first-class cabin fell silent. Malik's pulse hammered in his ears. He looked at his watch. The meeting could not be delayed. He swallowed the humiliation, pulled his luggage down the narrow aisle, the whispers behind him piercing like needles. In economy, the cramped seat squeezed his tall frame. Malik sat, fists clenched, memories flooding back. The professor who doubted his intelligence, the boardroom where he was mistaken for the coffee runner, the watchful eyes of police when he entered a store. He had believed that success, wealth, reputation would shield him. But no, one moment was enough to drag him back into the box they had built for him. And in that moment of humiliation, crammed in the shadows of economy class, Malik Carter made a vow. Jetstream would pay. And this time, the cost would be counted in tens of millions. The grand hall of the Fairmont San Francisco glittered like a palace of gold. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering streaks of light across the marble floor. But for Malik Carter, the spectacle only made the weight on his shoulders feel heavier. The shirt he had worn through the flight was wrinkled, his tie askew, and dark circles shadowed his eyes after 5 cramped hours in economy. He was 30 minutes late. In the world of investment, 30 minutes could mean an opportunity buried forever. "Mr. Carter, the group is waiting in the Peninsula Suite," the receptionist said with a polite bow, her sympathetic smile quietly acknowledging his fatigue. Malik gave a small nod, straightened his tie, and with every step toward the carved wooden doors, he felt as though he were walking into an arena. Inside the opulent suite, 7 investors sat around a gleaming long table. As the doors opened, all eyes turned sharply to him. Elena Morales, a Latina investor, raised her brows with concern. "Malik, we were starting to worry." He smiled calmly, though anger and humiliation still burned beneath the surface. "The flight had a complication, but let me show you why Tech Innovate is the company that will define the future of technology." With the polish of a seasoned orator, Malik launched into his presentation. Growth charts, market share indices, the roadmap for quantum applications, every number landed like a drumbeat, underscoring the emma he had built from a college dorm room. But then, a silent ripple passed through the room. Investors began glancing down at their phones. Fingers swiped across screens faster than Malik's words. The energy shifted. Elena turned her phone toward him. A video. The image of him at Atlanta Airport, stopped at the gate by a flight attendant, blocked by a security guard, forced to prove himself again and again. Brooke Jensen's cold voice echoed, "I need additional documents." And finally, the murmurs of the crowd as he was denied his first-class seat. The video was only minutes long, but already had hundreds of thousands of shares under a single hashtag. Matched flying while black. The Peninsula Suite fell into uneasy silence. Malik kept speaking, but his voice now seemed distant, muted by the storm spreading online. The growth figures faded into irrelevance in the shadow of the viral clip. When the meeting paused, Eleanor stayed behind with him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice steady and sincere. "You're not the first, Malik, but you might be the one strong enough to change it. Leadership isn't just profit, it's voice." Malik nodded slowly. Out on the balcony, San Francisco's fog crawled across the skyline, as hazy as the old memories rushing back. He remembered his father, a railway worker, once berated by a foreman simply for stopping to drink water. Malik knew then, if he stayed silent today, future generations would be trapped in the same cycle of humiliation. His phone buzzed. It was Evan Brooks, CFO, and his longtime friend from college. "Malik, have you seen Twitter?" "I have. It ruined my meeting." "Worse than that, it's exploding. And I reviewed our expenses. Do you know how much Tech Innovate spends on Jetstream each year?" "How much?" "About $4.2 million. We're among their top 3 tech clients." Malik gripped the balcony rail, his eyes cutting through the fog. That number wasn't just money. It was leverage. "Evan, do you remember last year in Boston, when that hotel refused to honor your reservation because they didn't believe you were the CFO?" Evan let out a bitter laugh. "I remember. And only when you threatened to pull the annual conference did they suddenly change their tune." "Exactly. And this time, we'll do the same. But bigger." Malik paused, his voice lowering into resolve. "Not just for me. For everyone Jetstream has humiliated." Back in the meeting room, Malik didn't open another slide. He stood tall, his gaze sweeping over the faces waiting for him. "Perhaps you've seen the video. Yes, I was discriminated against this morning. I purchased a first-class ticket. I hold a diamond, tier card. Yet I was treated as if I did not belong. And I will not let this go. Not just for me, but for the millions who've endured the same." A heavy silence followed. Then Gregory Shaw, the most skeptical of investors, leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, my fund is looking for partners committed to social responsibility. I want to see how you handle this. It will prove more than any financial report." Elena nodded in agreement. "Exactly. This is where you show the world the difference between a good CEO and a true leader." When Malik left the suite, he no longer felt the sting of shame. Instead, a cold determination settled over him. He called Marcus Hale, his legal advisor. "Marcus, prepare a discrimination lawsuit against Jetstream, but don't file it yet. I want it as leverage." Next, he called Priya Desai, head of marketing. "Prepare a media campaign. The message must be clear. This isn't a personal incident. It's a systemic disease." Finally, he messaged Nina Kapoor, head of travel. "Find out how much other tech firms spend with Jetstream every year. I need to know if we can build a coalition." In Malik's eyes, a light burned, not the lights of San Francisco, but the spark of a battle about to ignite. As night fell, he sat alone in his hotel room, his phone screen glowing with a notification: 40M Boycott. Jetstream was trending worldwide. Leaning back into his chair, he closed his eyes briefly. He knew by morning the world would no longer see him as just a black businessman denied a first-class seat. They would see him as the man who started a storm. The next morning, America woke up to a single name flooding every screen: Malik Carter. The video taken at the Atlanta airport gate had crossed 5 million views overnight. The hashtag #BoycottJetstream shot to #1 on Twitter, spreading like wildfire across a dry field. Morning news loops replayed the same images. Malik being stopped, asked for identification a second time, and the cold stare of security officer Dylan Hart as he blocked his path. On CNN, the anchor's voice sharpened. This was not a security procedure. This was a public humiliation. At Jetstream Airlines headquarters, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The communications team buried themselves in their phones, scrambling to draft a press release. What they produced was a hollow paragraph. Jetstream Airlines regrets the misunderstanding. We are committed to reviewing our procedures to avoid similar incidents in the future. The release only fanned the outrage. One Twitter user mocked, "A misunderstanding. He bought a first-class ticket, had a diamond card, and was still forced into economy. What kind of misunderstanding is that?" Jetstream's stock plummeted 6% within hours of the morning session. Inside an emergency boardroom meeting on the 50th floor, Jetstream CEO Robert Keating, 60-1, his face gaunt after a sleepless night, stood before the screen, his voice sharp. "This is just a media storm. It will pass. Do not exaggerate it further." Beside him, attorney Claire Monroe whispered, "You need to appear publicly, at least to show goodwill." Robert straightened his tie, his eyes flashing with the arrogance etched deep after 4 decades in the industry. He stepped up to the podium, cameras aimed directly at him, the lights reflecting off a strained smile. Jetstream has served millions of customers for over 40 years. We do not discriminate. This is an isolated incident being blown out of proportion by social media. That final phrase was the spark. In his San Francisco hotel room, Malik sat before the TV, listening to every word. When Robert uttered the words "isolated incident," Malik let out a small laugh. It was not amusement, but recognition of his opponent's weakness. Immediately, he called Priya Desai, Tech Innovate's head of marketing. "You heard him?" Priya's voice burned with fire. "Yes," Malik replied, "and we'll use every word. I want the message to be clear. This is not an isolated incident. This is a rotten system." Priya nodded. "I'll draft the statement. The opening line will be, 'If a black diamond tire CEO can be treated this way, how are ordinary passengers treated?'" As the sun climbed, other powerful voices joined in. Devin Cole, basketball legend and billionaire investor, tweeted, "7 years as a Diamond Jetstream member, and I've been flagged for extra checks every time. Not a coincidence. Not just Malik." Tasha Bennett, venture capitalist, posted on LinkedIn, "Last month I was refused coat check in first class. Reason? Unclear. But every white passenger had theirs accepted. #BoycottJetstream." Each testimony cut deeper into the airline's reputation. Meanwhile, Malik convened an emergency Zoom with his advisors. Company lawyer Marcus Hale was stern. "We have enough evidence to sue for discrimination, but I think we should hold that card, use it as leverage." CFO Evan Brooks added, "More important is our travel contract. It's worth over $4 million a year. And I just checked, Jetstream relies heavily on corporate clients. Cut that stream, and they'll bleed fast." Malik fell silent for a long moment. In his mind, the pieces were aligning. Legal pressure, media outrage, financial leverage. A perfect triangle to drive Jetstream into a corner. He looked directly into the camera, his voice steady and firm. "We're not just demanding justice. We're going to force them to change completely." Elsewhere, Robert Keating sat in his office, watching Jetstream's stock continue to sink. Claire Monroe entered, phone in hand. "Robert, we just received an email from one of our top 3 corporate clients, Tech Innovate. They want to review their travel contract." Robert's eyes snapped up, filled with unease. This was no longer a media storm. This was an earthquake that could wipe out his career. In San Francisco, Malik Carter gazed out at the horizon. The afternoon sky glowed golden, its light mirrored in his determined eyes. He knew the days ahead would bring a direct confrontation. A battle not just for himself, but for millions who had been forced into the economy section of society when they deserved to sit in the front row. Night fell over San Francisco, but inside the presidential suite of the hotel, the lights still burned bright. Malik Carter stood before the wide glass window, gazing out at the skyscrapers swallowed in fog. Within him, anger had hardened into something else, a cold, unshakable resolve. His phone buzzed. A message from Nina Kapoor, Tech Innovate's travel coordinator. "Preliminary review done. Just in the tech sector alone, companies spend tens of millions annually on Jetstream. Several have said they too faced similar incidents." Malik gave a faint smile. Exactly as he had predicted. He was not alone. An hour later, his laptop screen lit up. Zoom connected, and the familiar face of Devin Cole, CEO of Cloud Secure Technologies, appeared. The billionaire from Chicago carried an expression of simmering fury. "Malik, I just saw the video. It could have been you. It could have been me. It could have been any of us." "Exactly," Malik nodded. "Devin, how much does your company spend on Jetstream every year?" Devin frowned, did the math. "About 3 million, plus the annual conference." "Why?" "Because I want to build an alliance. If it's just me, they'll dismiss it as an isolated case. But if multiple companies pull their contracts, then it becomes a declaration of economic war." Devin's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Send me the invite. I'm in." Through the night, Malik dialed one CEO after another, leaders he had known for years. People who had endured the condescending stares, the limp handshakes, the rejections hidden behind polite smiles. Each call revealed another story. A female CEO recounted how, on a first-class flight, a flight attendant refused to hang her coat while every white passenger was taken. A male CFO recalled being asked for extra identification at check, in despite being a platinum member for a decade. A young executive gave a bitter laugh. "I've learned to stay silent to keep the contracts, but this time we have a chance to do it differently." By midnight, Malik had secured commitments from 8 companies to join an emergency meeting the next morning. Together, they controlled more than $22 million in annual contracts with Jetstream. Meanwhile, at Jetstream headquarters in New York, warning emails flooded in. An internal finance report displayed a chilling figure. 38% of Jetstream's revenue came from corporate contracts. If that stream dried up, the company would bleed instantly. CEO Robert Keating slumped in his office. On his desk lay a financial daily, its headline in bold: Jetstream crisis. Discrimination threatens the airline's #1 position. Robert crumpled the paper in his fist, but his hands trembled. This was no longer an isolated incident, as he had declared. This was a tidal wave ready to wash away his 40-year career. The following morning, a highly secured virtual conference began. Square after square lit up on the screen. Devon Cole, Tasha Bennett, Andre Watkins, Raymond Ellis, Charles Boone. Each wore an expression of grave determination. Malik opened, his voice steady yet commanding. We've all endured enough. If a diamond tire CEO with a first-class ticket can still be treated as an outsider, what does that say about ordinary passengers? Today, we're not just talking about flights, we're talking about dignity. Silence gripped the room. Then Eleanor Morales, the investor who had witnessed Malik's San Francisco meeting days earlier, appeared on screen, interjecting, "Ladies and gentlemen, remember this. When the money leaves, they are forced to listen." The discussion surged. CEOs shared figures, strategies, resolve. Tasha Bennett confirmed her fund spent $2.5 million annually. Andre Watkins added $4 million. Together, the alliance now held over $35 million in contracts, more than 20% of Jetstream's corporate base. Devon Cole concluded with a single line: enough to make them tremble. Just then, Malik's phone buzzed. A message from Maya Jefferson, Tech Innovate's social media strategist. At Boycott. Jetstream has crossed 10 million mentions. CNN, NBC, Wall Street Journal are all requesting interviews. Malik looked around the digital room, at the faces of CEOs lit with determination. He knew the movement had begun. Across the country, Robert Keating stood in his dim office, watching Jetstream's stock plunge another 8% that day. He muttered to himself, as if to stave off panic. It's just social media, just some noise. But deep down, Robert understood. That noise had become a storm, and at its center was the man he had dismissed at the boarding gate, Malik Carter, who was now transforming personal humiliation into a full-fledged uprising of an entire generation of leaders. The plane touched down in Chicago on a freezing morning. Malik Carter stepped out with a black leather suitcase, his eyes sharp as steel. He did not fly Jetstream, but chose Delta. The respect he received in first class that morning, the warm greeting, the genuine smile, stood in bitter contrast to the humiliation he had endured only days before. In the private dining room of Gibson's, golden light reflected off dark wood. The space was elegant but heavy. Malik sat waiting, his hand resting lightly on the table, his calm gaze suggesting everything had already been calculated. The door opened. Robert Keating walked in, followed by Claire Monroe, his legal counsel, and Simon Everett, his PR director. Robert looked nothing like the man who once graced magazine covers. His tie askew, dark circles under his eyes, his stride stripped of its usual arrogance. Still, as he extended his hand, he forced a diplomatic smile. "Mr. Carter, thank you for agreeing to meet us." Malik clasped his hand firmly. "I don't like wasting time, Mr. Keating. Let's get straight to the point." Once wine and water were served, Robert began, his voice carrying the smoothness of a veteran negotiator. "We deeply apologize for your experience. It does not reflect Jetstream's core values. To show our good faith, we have prepared a compensation package, lifetime diamond status, 1 million air miles, and a substantial financial settlement. Naturally, it would all remain confidential." Claire slid a thick folder across the table, its red cover gleaming. Malik did not touch it. He merely raised an eyebrow. "Do you think I came here to bargain for personal perks?" The air froze. Robert frowned slightly. "I assumed you wanted the respect you deserve." Malik leaned forward, his voice slow yet razor-sharp. "No. I want you to answer for everyone who has been treated as I was, for those without the power to sit in this room." From his briefcase, he pulled out a tablet and placed it on the table. The screen lit up with a spreadsheet. 3 documented cases of discrimination against Jetstream passengers within the past year, complete with staff names, flight numbers, dates, and times. In the past 72 hours, I've received dozens of reports. This is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern. And do you know what name appears most often? Brooke Jensen, the employee who humiliated me. 8 complaints in 1 year. Yet she still stands at the gate, still allowed to shame passengers. Claire stiffened, pushing her glasses up nervously. Simon Everett looked away, avoiding Malik's gaze. Robert's face flushed red, his voice rising. "Mr. Carter, these are a handful of isolated cases. In an airline serving millions, there will always be—" "No!" Malik cut him off, his voice echoing through the closed room. "Don't use numbers to bury the truth. I climbed every rung with blood and sweat, only to be treated like an intruder in first class. And let me be clear, the truth cannot be bought with miles or money." Robert inhaled deeply, trying to recover his composure. His tone softened, almost patronizing. "Mr. Carter, be realistic. You are an important customer, but Jetstream has millions of others. We cannot allow one individual to dictate structural change across the entire company." Malik said nothing. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small silver device, and placed it on the table. "Do you know Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings?" Malik said evenly, his eyes unblinking. "This entire conversation has been recorded. Every denial, every time you called me an isolated case, is now evidence." Robert's face paled. Simon Everett cleared his throat nervously, while Claire tapped her fingers on the table, a subtle signal of alarm. Malik drew out another folder, placing it before Robert. The title stamped on the cover read, "Jetstream Accountability Initiative." "These are my demands. Terminate any employee with multiple discrimination complaints. Establish an independent oversight committee reporting directly to the board. Commit to diversity at every level, from staff to leadership, and $10 million in contributions to civil rights organizations. Robert slammed his hand on the table, his voice snarling. "This is extortion. You want to turn a personal incident into a national crisis?" Malik locked eyes with him, unwavering. "No, Robert. I don't need to turn it into anything. You and your company already have. I'm merely showing the world the evidence." The air thickened. Robert shot to his feet, his chair toppling backward. He gritted his teeth, his voice low but loud enough for all to hear. "People like you, always demanding more, always making yourselves the victims. You'll ruin your own chances." Malik remained seated, his expression unchanged. He knew that one slip of the tongue, laced with prejudice, captured on recording in this private room, was enough to end Robert Keating's career. And in that instant, Malik realized he now held all the power. As Robert and his entourage stormed out, Malik sat calmly, his fingers brushing over the silver recorder. A warm voice came from behind him. Leonard Price, the restaurant owner and old friend, who had overheard everything. "He dug his own grave, Malik. Now it's your turn to bury it." Malik looked up, his eyes gleaming. He knew the real battle had only just begun. The next morning, Tech Innovate's headquarters in San Francisco had turned into a fortress. The 20th floor, usually reserved for product launches, was now dedicated to a historic meeting. Security guards stood from the main lobby to the private elevators, checking every invitation embossed with a silver logo. Inside the conference room, powerful faces began to appear. Devon Cole with his athletic build, Tasha Bennett in a cobalt blue suit, her eyes sharp as blades, Raymond Ellis, the healthcare mogul, carrying a file thick as an indictment, and more than 20 other CEOs, the total market value under their command exceeding $120 billion. Malik Carter stood at the door, shaking each hand. Today, he was not just the CEO of Tech Innovate. Today, he was the convener of an alliance. At exactly 10 a.m., Malik stepped to the center of the room. Behind him, on the massive LED screen, a phrase appeared. Executive Equity Initiative. EEI. "Thank you all for coming," Malik began, his voice warm yet firm. "We all know why we are here. Yesterday it was me. But today, it could be any one of us. This is not about a seat on a plane. This is about the right to be treated as human beings, nothing more, nothing less." He paused, letting the words sink in. Around the table, every face grew serious. Evan Brooks, Tech Innovate's CFO, stepped forward to present the financial analysis. Cold numbers appeared on the screen. Jetstream depends on 38% of its revenue from corporate contracts. The 25 companies in this room control more than $43 million of Jetstream's annual corporate war revenue. If they all withdrew at once, that would slash 20% of Jetstream's contracts, a fatal blow. "This is not just about money," Evan concluded. "This is about leverage. Leverage Jetstream cannot ignore." Next, Priya Desai, head of marketing, laid out the communications plan. "We will not act individually. Every company will announce on the same day, at the same hour, across every platform, one single message. We cannot partner with an airline that tolerates discrimination." Tasha Bennett nodded firmly. A coordinated campaign. Leave Jetstream no time to spin. Devon Cole smirked. Call it an organized boycott. If Montgomery shook a nation by refusing to ride buses, then we will shake the skies by refusing to fly Jetstream. The room thundered with approving knocks on the table. When the presentations ended, Malik returned to the center, laying both hands flat on the long wooden table. Let me be clear. This is not about personal revenge. This is our chance to force real change. We will present 3 public demands to Jetstream. Fire employees with multiple discrimination complaints. Establish an independent oversight body. Commit to diversifying leadership. If they agree, we will consider maintaining contracts. If not, we withdraw together. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, heads nodded. A rare consensus among titans of industry. In the middle of the meeting, Malik's phone buzzed. A message from Vivian Lau, a Jetstream board member. Keating is in an emergency board meeting. He called EEI economic terrorism. But several members are wavering. Malik looked up, his eyes flashing cold fire. Do you see? They are already afraid. And when your opponent is afraid, that is when discipline matters most. By afternoon, the draft of the joint declaration was complete. Its closing words read like a vow. Dignity is not a privilege. It is a fundamental right. We will not spend a single dollar on organizations that deny this. As Malik signed the document, his hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. He was no longer alone. Beside him stood an entire line of leaders of color, people who had once remained silent for fear of losing contracts, now standing as one. That evening, CNBC broke the story. Rumors of CEO Alliance pulling contracts from Jetstream. Stock plunges another 7%. In his New York office, Robert Keating slammed his whiskey glass on the table. They can't do this. They can't. But Claire Monroe's eyes held no confidence. She whispered, They can, Robert. And worse, they already are. In a darkened room, Malik sat with only the glow of his laptop screen on his face. On Twitter, the hashtag #BoycottJetstream was now joined by a new one. Executive Equity Initiative. He allowed himself a quiet smile. The battle had gone beyond one airline. It had become a movement. The next morning, America woke up to blaring headlines. Jetstream calls CEO Alliance economic terrorism. Keating, we will not be extorted. The Jetstream press room was packed with reporters. Camera flashes went off in relentless bursts. Robert Keating stood at the podium, his face strained into a facade of toughness. Beside him, Claire Monroe coldly flipped through files, while Simon Everett read carefully from a prepared statement. Jetstream Airlines has proudly served millions of customers for over 40 years, Robert began, his voice echoing. We will not bow to any special interest group. A few companies coordinating to pull contracts amounts to nothing less than economic terrorism. His words landed like hammer strikes, but instead of quelling the flames, they only fanned them higher. Reporters hurled questions, and across social media, millions of voices erupted. Terrorism? Asking for fairness is terrorism now. Keating just signed Jetstream's death warrant. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Malik Carter watched the entire press conference on the big screen in Tech Innovate's strategy room. At his side, Priya Desai frowned, jotting down notes, while Marcus Hale tapped his pen furiously against a notebook. He just made himself the enemy of the entire business community, Priya observed. I've seen Twitter. Now it's not just black CEOs, but Asian and Latino leaders speaking out too. Evan Brooks leaned forward, his tone low but resolute. This is when we play the trump card. Malik nodded, picking up the small silver recorder he had carried since the meeting in Chicago. That afternoon, during a live CNN interview, Malik appeared in a simple charcoal grey suit. His face was calm, his eyes bright with conviction. The host did not waste time. Mr. Carter, the CEO of Jetstream has called your actions and those of your colleagues economic terrorism. How do you respond? Malik leaned slightly forward, his voice firm and unwavering. I call it corporate accountability. If demanding dignity, fairness, and transparency is considered terrorism, then perhaps the problem isn't with us. The audience in the studio burst into applause, but Malik wasn't finished. He placed the silver recorder on the table and pressed play. Robert Keating's voice filled the studio, cold and dismissive from that dinner in Chicago. Mr. Carter, you're just one passenger. Jetstream has millions of others. We cannot restructure an entire company for one person. And let me be blunt. People like you always demand more. You'll only destroy yourselves. The audience froze. The host stared, stunned into silence. Malik looked straight into the camera, his voice ringing clear. This is no longer speculation. This is the truth. This is how the CEO of Jetstream sees us. Within minutes, the recording was clipped and spread across the internet. A new hashtag exploded. Ah, these people, echoing Keating's contemptuous phrase. Social media lit up with memes, cartoons, and videos. These people, we are your passengers. We are your revenue. We are your future. In just 24 hours, Jetstream lost another 12% of its stock value. Major outlets declared it the worst leadership crisis in modern aviation history. Inside Jetstream headquarters, senior executives panicked. Vivian Lau, a board member, sent Malik a discreet message. The board is breaking apart. Several members want Keating out to save the company. You've already won half the battle. Malik read it, feeling the winds shift. But he knew this was no time to stop. Turning to the CEO Alliance gathered on video conference, he spoke with calm authority. Keating has dug his own grave. But we will not stop at bringing him down. We will force the entire system to change. Tomorrow, every company in EEI will announce the withdrawal of contracts. I want the world to see. This isn't about one individual. This is a movement. And that night, Malik sat alone by the window, city lights casting their glow across his face. His phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from employees, from ordinary passengers, from strangers. Thank you for speaking out. Because of you, we have hope. Malik closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He knew with certainty, tomorrow, Jetstream would face the greatest earthquake in its history. And it would not just be about retribution. It would mark the beginning of a new era. 9 a.m. the next morning, across the United States, emails went out almost simultaneously. On Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, a wave of posts appeared carrying the same message. We are officially terminating our partnership with Jetstream Airlines, effective immediately. Dignity is not negotiable. Executive Equity Initiative Boycott Jetstream. Within 15 minutes, 20 or 5 companies made their announcements. From technology and healthcare to finance and entertainment, billion-dollar names rose together like a chorus, one rhythm, one voice. On CNBC, a breaking news alert flashed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing an unprecedented event. A wave of corporations have simultaneously withdrawn contracts from Jetstream, totaling $43 million annually. This is nearly 20% of their corporate travel revenue, a fatal blow. CNN carried live coverage, splitting the screen. On the left, tweets from CEOs with the hashtag #BoycottJetstream. On the right, Jetstream's stock chart plunging with no bottom in sight. Red numbers blinked, 18% in a single morning. Inside the CEO's office at Jetstream, Robert Keating hurled his iPad onto the table, the screen shattering. He roared at his leadership team. "They want to destroy us. We'll sue. We'll call this an anti-competitive conspiracy." But Claire Monroe, the company's lawyer, shook her head. "Robert, no one will believe it. Your recording has been made public. The phrase, 'these people,' is everywhere online. This is no longer about the law. This is public opinion. And public opinion has turned." PR chief Simon Everett's face was ashen. "We are now seen as the textbook case of discrimination. The media is calling this the worst crisis management failure of the century." Robert slammed his hand on the table, but in his eyes flickered something he had never shown in 40 years of leadership. Fear. In San Francisco, Malik Carter sat in a conference room with the CEO Alliance. As the contract withdrawal posts went live, the room was silent for a few moments, then erupted with clapping and pounding fists on the table. Devon Cole laughed aloud. "This is a day they will never forget. We just proved that economic unity is stronger than any one individual." Tasha Bennett added, her voice sharp as steel. "And the younger generation will see. They don't have to stay silent anymore. If even a CEO can be dismissed, where else will justice come from, if not from us?" Malik said nothing. He looked around and saw faces once scarred by discrimination, now lit with pride. Inside him, a certainty echoed. This was no longer just a movement. This was a historic turning point. At that moment, Malik's phone buzzed. A message from Vivian Lau, a Jetstream board member. "We are in an emergency meeting. Many members want to force Robert to resign to save the company. Leadership change may come this week. You've already won." Malik read it, a weary but relieved smile forming on his face. He turned back to the Alliance. "They're breaking from the inside, but don't stop now. Show the world that when discrimination becomes too costly, change is the only option left." By afternoon, the media storm reached its peak. MSNBC aired a special report. Jetstream, from national pride to a symbol of racial discrimination. A commentator added, "This is the Montgomery bus boycott of our time, but instead of ordinary passengers, it is top executives using contracts to force change." The hashtag #HandThesePeople was repeated like a battle cry. Citizens posted short clips. "These people are your doctors. These people are your engineers. These people are your CEOs. These people are America. Inside Jetstream's boardroom, the air was suffocating. One executive slammed the table. "We cannot let him drag this out any longer. The stock has lost 30% of its value in just 2 days. Investors are demanding answers." Robert shouted back, "You plan to betray me? I've led this airline for 4 decades." But this time, no one replied. Each face turned downward, avoiding his eyes. And Robert knew his power had slipped away right before him. Meanwhile, in a small cafe near Union Square, Malik sat alone. On his phone, he read a message from an anonymous Jetstream employee. "Thank you. I filed complaints before, but they were buried. Now we finally have hope." Malik looked up, the late afternoon sun spilling across the city. He knew the battle was not over, but for the first time, he felt the door to real change had been pushed open. A bleak morning at Jetstream's New York headquarters. Rain hammered against the towering glass windows, but it could not drown out the shouting that echoed from the boardroom. Inside, the air was as heavy as a courtroom. Robert Keating sat at the head of the table, his face tense, tie crooked, voice hoarse after too many sleepless nights. "You want to betray me? I led Jetstream through the oil crisis, through recessions, through international competition. And now, because of one viral video, you're ready to throw me away." An elderly board member, hair pure white, tapped his pen lightly on the table. "Robert, this is not one video. This is a tidal wave that has drowned us. The stock has lost nearly 40% in 3 days. 25 major contracts have vanished. And it was your own words, these people, that turned us into the enemy of the public." Another member, Vivian Lau, added slowly, "We have no choice left. You have become the burden." Robert shot to his feet, slamming his hand on the table. "You think a new CEO can save this company? You're naive. Malik Carter is nothing but an opportunist. If we give in to him, tomorrow there will be hundreds of new demands." But the faces around the table no longer shared his conviction. An emergency vote was called. 11 ballots. When the final slip was laid down, the result was clear. 8 in favor, 3 against. Robert Keating was forced to resign immediately. No applause, no cheers. Only the relentless pounding of rain on the glass, a funeral dirge for a dynasty rotted from within. That afternoon, Jetstream issued a press release. Jetstream Airlines announces the appointment of new CEO Naomi Sinclair, 48, former Chief Operating Officer. Ms. Sinclair pledges a full reform to regain customer trust. The story spread swiftly across the nation. On CNN, her image appeared. A white woman with cropped hair and resolute eyes, known for a philosophy of transparent and decisive leadership. A reporter remarked, "Leadership change is the first signal, but not enough. The biggest question remains, will Jetstream truly reform, or is this just an attempt to calm the storm?" In Tech Innovate's offices, Malik read the statement, his face unreadable. Around the round table, Alliance members waited. Devin Cole slammed his fist on the table. "This is our chance. If they think swapping us will quiet us, we need to push harder." Tasha Bennett nodded firmly. "We need a written agreement, not promises, not press releases." Malik stayed silent for a long moment, then rose, gazing out the window. The fiery sunset cast its glow across his face. Exactly. We are not fighting to change a name. We are fighting to change a system, and I will make them sign that commitment. The next day, Naomi Sinclair herself called Malik. On the video feed, she sat in her new office, the Jetstream logo behind her. "Mr. Carter, I want to meet face to face, not to negotiate, but to begin again. If you truly want change, so do I." Malik looked straight into the screen. He could hear the weariness in her voice, but also a spark of sincerity. "Very well, but you should know this. We are not coming to bargain. We are coming to set a new standard." Meanwhile, public debate erupted across social media. A new hashtag appeared, "Not after Keating." People argued, was Naomi strong enough to dismantle the toxic legacy Robert left behind? Would the hashtag Executive Equity Initiative stop once one man was replaced? A New York Times reporter wrote, "Malik Carter has opened a new era. The story is no longer about a first-class seat. It is about how corporate America treats its customers, its employees, and its foundational values." That night, Malik sat in silence in his hotel room. His phone buzzed with messages, thanks from Jetstream employees, from ordinary passengers, from young students writing, "Because of you, we believe the world can change." He placed a hand on his chest, eyes closed. He knew the battle was far from over. But from this moment on, the wind had shifted, and for the first time, change was no longer a dream. It was becoming reality. The top-floor conference room of the Peninsula Chicago was silent as stone. Outside the window, a gray sky reflected across the vast surface of Lake Michigan. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the entire city was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome of this confrontation. At one end of the table, Malik Carter sat upright, his eyes steady, a thick dossier in front of him titled Jetstream Accountability Initiative. At the other end, Naomi Sinclair, Jetstream's newly appointed CEO, wore a simple black suit. Her face projected composure, though it could not hide the pressure she carried. Between them stretched a gulf as wide as history itself, history of contempt, exclusion, and empty promises. Naomi began, her voice low and hoarse from many sleepless nights. "Mr. Carter, I do not deny the truth. What happened to you and to many others is unacceptable. I was appointed to fix this. But I need to know, what do you want?" Malik leaned forward, his voice slow and deliberate, each word like a hammer striking the table. "We are not here to negotiate. We are here to set a standard. There are 4 demands. Dismiss all employees with multiple discrimination complaints. Establish an independent oversight committee reporting directly to the board, not the CEO. Commit to increasing diversity in leadership and senior management within 3 years. Contribute $10 million to civil rights organizations as a public apology expressed through action." He paused, his gaze locked on Naomi. "If you agree, the EEI will consider maintaining contracts. If not, we withdraw completely. And I assure you, we are not alone." The air thickened. Naomi drew a deep breath, her eyes skimming the documents. She knew full well, signing meant Jetstream would have to change at its very core. Refusing could mean the airline's immediate collapse. Claire Monroe, the company's lawyer, interjected, her voice taut. These demands are extreme. They imply acknowledging a discriminatory system has existed, and that will unleash a storm of lawsuits. Malik turned to Claire, his tone cold. That storm has already begun. The only question left is whether Jetstream chooses to endure it or learns to fly through it. Naomi raised her hand, signaling Claire to stop. Her eyes returned to Malik, thoughtful and steady. I am not here to defend the mistakes of my predecessor. I am here to save an organization on life support. If survival requires change, I am ready. In that moment, Malik saw in Naomi's eyes a spark of true resolve. Not the glossy coating of a press release, but the steel of someone who understood, reform or perish. He nodded slowly. You have 48 hours. Once the commitment is signed, we will suspend the full withdrawal. If not, the EEI will announce Phase 2 of the campaign. And this time, it will not be just corporations. It will be global consumers. Naomi gripped the pen in her hand so tightly her knuckles whitened. She put her signature on the draft, not the final agreement, but the first official promise. News leaked instantly. On CNBC, the headline ran, Jetstream enters talks with EEI, a new era for aviation. Experts debated fiercely. This is a victory for economic justice. But if Jetstream carries out mass firings, can the airline survive? On Twitter, one user wrote, We just witnessed history. A black CEO forced an entire airline to kneel before justice. That night, Malik sat alone in his hotel room. His phone buzzed relentlessly, calls from journalists, colleagues, strangers. But he opened only one message, from an anonymous Jetstream employee. I've worked at Check-in for 12 years. For the first time, I believe this company can change. Thank you. Malik smiled faintly, then closed his eyes. The battle was not over, but now it was no longer his alone. Tomorrow, Jetstream would have to decide. Change to survive, or cling to the past and vanish from the skies. And Malik Carter knew, for the first time in history, he had forced a giant corporation to listen to the voice it once dismissed. Today, Jetstream planes still take off into the skies, but inside the cabins, the atmosphere is no longer the same. No longer a place where prejudice hides behind the mask of procedure. Now, every greeting, every ticket, every glance has been forced to change, because one man refused to bow his head. Malik Carter could have chosen silence, accepted compensation, and gone back to sitting in first class like so many of the wealthy do. But he did not. He turned personal humiliation into collective strength, turned decades of silence into a voice that carried all the way into the boardroom. This story reminds us that justice does not come from belated apologies, but from changes written in action. And in the world of business, where money is the strongest language, it is often only when discrimination becomes too expensive that change finally happens. But above all, this is not just the story of one airline. It is a reminder to all of us, dignity is not a privilege. It is a basic right. No one has the authority to take it away, no matter what seat you sit in, first class or economy. If you believe that collective power can create change, press like and subscribe so you do not miss the stories to come. And leave a comment with just 3 words. Dignity wins, so we can spread this message together. Because when money speaks, make sure your money speaks for justice.